it's nice to be the person to try and deliver good news, even if it's tentative good news. And this is what to do when your grants get unfrozen, when these judges are so adamant that that needs to happen. First slide's about me. Anybody who's heard my presentations knows that the slides are mere suggestions for me, but also on the website is a more detailed slide presentation. You must disperse EPA funds within 5 business days. This is not in there, but don't panic and make a mistake and overdraw your funds. That is audit bait. That would give EPA grounds to terminate your grant for violating regulations and the terms and conditions. You have to bake your drawdowns based on actual costs incurred through the ASAP system once it comes back. Save all your payment documentation, invoices, etc., for reviews, because odds are you're going to get reviewed. Drawdown, have your accounting records lined up with the amount of the drawdown. Work with your accountants so you have everything, the source documentation, all in one place to show that to the auditors or the grant specialists that is going to be conducting the review. Very, very, very important. Very important. Do not overdraw. Don't draw down the money to bank it. You're asking for trouble. And there's some training on there now. Next slide, please. Be sure your records tell a story. And Zealand loves telling stories out there about your good program performance. So I tell a different story. Make sure your financial books tell the story of how that money's being spent. That's just as important of all your programmatic reports is also your financial reports, because that's where the auditors are going to dig in. That's where the Inspector General's office will dig in. Have only one set of books. Don't draw down money to the Peter and Paul thing. Rob Peter to pay Paul with 2 sets of books. Well, we'll pay this money back. We'll overdraw this time, but we're going to get a foundation grant and we'll make the government whole. I don't know how many times in my career I've seen that happen where it just doesn't happen, where that money comes through. Don't fool around financially. Payroll records 100% of the time. Make sure you know how your employees are charging to cost centers, everybody having different sources of funds, and make sure your records are based on actual hours, good faith estimates, but periodically actual hours spent for the work. Make sure you've got all those payroll records. The auditors love to live in the payroll records and look for mistake. And again, don't charge employees time if they're on travel, charge it to a foundation grant, and then charge the EPA grant for the time for that, unless it's a cost share. That's a good way to get in trouble too. Next, please. Procurement, don't panic. Don't go out with a bunch of sole source contracts in an effort to draw down the money. Other than your states and tribes, and I think most people are the nonprofit and local government communities, you've got to comply with full and open competition. Now, there are contracts at 10,000 or less. Some people, that's an asterisk. Some people do have the higher micro purchase level. It can go up to 50,000. I've basically only seen that with some universities and some very, very large nonprofits. Maybe friends at RTI perhaps might have the larger size because they've got the financial records to support it. But that's the way the system works. I did see something in the terms and conditions. Somebody in the chat pointed out that they have an additional 15 business days. That's on my major slide presentation. This slide presentation got really cut down, but my big slide presentation does note that you do have 15 days to pay EPA back. But if you keep doing that over and over, you're technically in non-compliance. If you're constantly giving money back to EPA, you're going to get on the radar screen. So just try and do the disbursement within 5 business days. There is a little bit of a float in there. I think 5% of $1,000 is in your terms and conditions. Conflicts of interest, don't go there either. Again, that's audit bait. You're going to get, if you get caught, there will be serious consequences. It gives the agency grounds to terminate your grant, to waive to waive it up there, like Mr. Zeldin likes to do about finding fraud, waste, and abuse. That's a good way to get there and give him ammunition that he doesn't have now. And finally, there's a procurement best practices guide. Next slide, please. Consultant fee cap. This is statutory to EPA. It can get really complicated. Even states and tribes have to comply with this. It's an Appropriation Act a long time ago. It applies to essentially where the individual consultants, they function like employees. Remember, your consultants are contractors, even if they get a 1099. So the competitive procurement procedures apply. But I've given you an example here of a type of contract that you might want to consider. That's a fixed price contract for a discrete product, such as a study. You can make the payment in stages if the terms of the contract require that. So you give an upfront payment, let's say it's $10,000, $5,000 at time of the contract award. You can draw that $5,000 down because that you have an obligation to pay the contractor. At the end of the study or sampling analysis, you pay the contractor the rest of it. That's a way. The consultant fee cap doesn't apply if, again, that's a fixed price contract, and of course the cost is reasonable. It can't be just give them money because you like them. Okay, I think that's the end of my presentation. Again, I've got a longer presentation that talks about that 15-day payback out there. I will be in the CCG breakout room and to answer any questions. But again, when ASAP opens up, draw down all you're entitled to, but make sure you don't overdraw. You could be stepping on a rake.
Thank you so much, Jim. I know you had to sort of really squeeze in a lot of information in a short amount of time. We're going to send out all of Jim's slides. We're also going to post them on our website. And if you have questions, you can also reach out to TRC. I can put their email in again, and they can loop Jim in if needed with your questions. But now I'm going to turn things over to Patricia Kwan from TRC. She's going to go over just briefly what do you do if you receive a termination, sort of outlining available options and critical steps for you to take. And then we should have time for a quick Q&A for Jim and Patricia before we go into breakouts. So go ahead, Patricia. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So hopefully this doesn't happen to you, but if it does, you just understand that you do have 30 days to respond. So let's go on to the next slide. So what I would just say first off is submit the L4GG intake form so that you can get connected with a pro bono attorney and they can provide advice on how to respond to that termination letter because basically, you know, reasons for terminations can be very specific to your grant program. And so you want to make sure that you're fully addressing those reasons for termination. And just know that EPA is sending these contract termination letters to many, many grantees across many programs. But the important thing is to respond within that 30 calendar days. The other thing is that in addition, you do have multiple options to consider. First off, you need to decide, are you going to contest this termination? Once you decide that, then you need to decide, do you want to consider going through EPA's dispute resolution process, or do you want to go into litigation? These are not all decisions you have to make immediately, but fairly soon. And then also, it's important that if your funding is frozen ASAP, that you demand access to payment in ASAP if those funds are frozen. It's really essential to restore that access, you know, whether you contest the termination or not. And then basically staying in compliance and building your administrative record. So next slide. We decided to come up with a visual representation of this, and we'll be sending these slides out later. But this basically walks you through I think maybe some people are visual learners, just kind of what to do and just kind of, this is like a decision tree. But then also, I think the overarching thing, whether you contest a termination or not is that you maintain or build your administrative record of harms that are done to your organization, that you stay in compliance with the terms and conditions that you actually have, not ones that EPA is trying to impose on you. So I know that one thing that's really confusing when you receive that termination letter is that you're going to get a new set of grant terms and conditions that are completely different from what you signed. Really, the important thing is if you're contesting is that you're staying in compliance with that ones that you actually did sign. So just remember that. And then the idea is that you're basically focusing on recovering incurred expenses through the data termination and minimizing future expenses, but trying to keep the project going, trying to stay in compliance in some minimal way, understanding, of course, that you're not having the same access to your funding. And then in terms of sort of other recommended actions that go beyond a 30-day timeline, the restoring access to ASAP, which I've already mentioned, critically important, identifying, external funding, and then sharing your story. The other thing is that, please do reach out to TRC so that we can advise you on some other types of things, administrative things, in terms of time tracking. You need to track your time differently through that. After the data termination, whether you decide to go into closeout, you are entitled to those closeout costs. You are also entitled to to recover incurred expenses through that data termination. Being terminated doesn't mean you forfeited your ability to recover those costs. And then if your access to your grant is restored and the termination is rescinded, you need to keep track of any sort of kind of minimal program activities that you've been doing. So next slide. And this is just kind of talking a little bit more about staying in compliance. And here, I think one of the first things you're going to, besides responding to the termination letter, getting that advice from Lawyers for Good Government, there are very specific templates that they've developed to help draft that response. You also want to report your updating. You want to get all your financials up to date and your program activities up to date through that data termination. So that data termination is going to be kind of looms large. It is significant because it's kind of a demarcation between you as a grantee and compliance and being able to fully perform your grant to the post termination date where you're basically in a defensive posture. So that's why the time tracking is very, very important. Whether you're talking about closeout activities or project activities to stay in compliance. And again, the fact that you don't have access to ASAP is not supposed to be connected to a termination. Normally, if you are terminated, you should continue to have access to ASAP because you should be able to recover your costs for those incurred expenses through the date of termination. So I think it's really important to separate out those things, and hence there's sort of separate remedies for each of those things, restoring access to ASAP versus contesting a termination. And then of course you do have to kind of flow that down, which means that you're going to have to issue some stop work orders on subrecipient contracts if you're choosing to contest. And even if you are in a terminated status, you still need to do your reporting. I mean, I know it feels like EPA is not paying for that. Why should I do it? But the idea is about being in compliance. Especially if you want to go into litigation, you want to go through EPA's dispute resolution, you want to contest this, the best defensive posture is to just continue to stay in compliance. One of the easiest ways to do that is to continue your reporting. So if you got a termination notice, but you have a report due on April 30th, submit that report. So it's really, really, really critically important. And last slide here is just if you have any questions, please reach out and we're happy to walk you through anything. And then we also we also coordinate with Lawyers for Good Government in terms of legal types of issues, but we're definitely here to help on the compliance front.